So, hello everyone, and as I was telling my colleague, I stand between you and lunch, so I'll hurry up, I think. Happy to be here. It's my first time here today in the Paris Space Week, and I'm impressed by the representation. So, commercialization at ESA is not really a new subject in the sense that ESA, the European Space Agency, has been active in sectors close to the market, be they launchers or telecommunications, but now commercialization, innovation, and the new approaches, commonly called new space, have taken a new meaning at ESA. So I will try to, where do I have to? Voila, thank you. I think this sums up, can you go to the one before? Thank you. First of all, we have a new DG since 1 year now, so it's, I would say the DG has set up an agenda for his mandate until 25 and beyond, proposing a common vision for space in Europe and defining 5 priorities. And in the 5 priorities which you see on the chart, you see that commercialization stands very importantly. Of course, relations between ESA and the European Union are a key subject as well. Safety and security, we can see nowadays how important it is. Program challenges and transformation of ESA to make it a more, let's say, a dynamic, even more dynamic agency than today. But commercialization has a strong let's say, focus in his mind, and I think in all our directorates, because of, we see the evolution of the space sector worldwide towards more private investment, towards more emphasis on commercial subjects. Also, let's say, the emergence of completely new entrepreneurs in space, and we see them today. You see around us the number of startups which perhaps didn't exist 5 years ago, but are now highly successful for many of them. So commercialization is a priority, and I would like to sum up, let's say, the subject of today's presentation with this chart. I will then elaborate further. What is the issue with commercialization of space in Europe? Why do I have an instability? I don't know. If we look at public investment in space in 21, worldwide it is about 80 billion euros, more or less. It grows at a fairly steady pace, but let's say from 20 to 21 the growth was 4%, so it grows slowly but safely. If we look at the European public spending in space, public investment in space, so what the governments invest in space in Europe, it's roughly 12 billion euros in 21, and it has grown quite substantially, still 7% from 20 to 21. I would say despite the conditions of the COVID, still it has grown, which shows how important space is as a tool. Now, if we look at private space investment in 21, you will see that we are above 12 billion euros worldwide. So already the private investment in space has surpassed the European public spending. It's extremely important. It's a completely new feature. Private investment in space worldwide is larger than the European public space investment. And it has grown, and this is the real point, I would say, it has grown by 86% from 20 to 21. Already the year before, it had as well grown very significantly, more than 100%. So we are on a quasi-exponential curve for what concerns private investment in space. However, the bad news for Europe is, if we look at private space investment in Europe, it has only grown by 14%. So much less than the worldwide private space investment. And why is Europe lagging behind? Why is Europe not attracting as much private investment in space as it should, is really the question that we have to ask ourselves. And this is really the question where we at ESA would like to bring an answer, or several answers. Other important figures, 27% growth in number of launches, so a very high number of launches. And also there, an important fact is that China is now launching more than the US. Some 1,800 satellites put into orbit. This is also a record number. Out of them, 95% of small sats. So here again, we see the effect of the so-called new space approach. We see the effect of private investment in space because, of course, of the small sat launched, not all of them are private satellites, but a very large majority of them are private. They are the Starlink constellation and other constellations. So here, I think this chart captures really why is private investment in space becoming a reality, a very substantial one, and why Europe must be active in this sector. Because otherwise, of course, the risk is that our nuggets, the pépites, our future unicorns, they might go elsewhere than Europe to find the private investment they so badly need. And this is what we want to avoid. Oops. Just a little focus on those figures. So first going to public space budgets worldwide. Public space budget, as I said, is more or less 80 billion euros, and Europe, in a very stable manner, represents 15% of these public space budgets. And the fun part is that if you look at public space budgets worldwide over the last decades, over the last 30 years, the US share has decreased, because, of course, Asia has grown very substantially, in particular China, but also Japan, India, and even it is probably underestimated. However, the Europe share has remained more or less stable. Still, Europe is only 15% of the public space spending. Now, if we go to private investments, just to give you a focus on the European private investments, they have reached a level in 21 of a little bit more than 600 million euro. Okay, this is not insignificant, but still the number of deals has grown. The value of the deals have been increasing sharply since 2019 because, of course, we are reaching growing maturity and so more advanced series of funding. But nevertheless, as I mentioned first, what is a little bit worrying for us is that the growth rate of the private investment in space in Europe is far less than the growth rate worldwide. Looking now at markets in space, these are figures I gather you all know. The upstream markets are in the average of 30 billion worldwide, which is, of course, much less than the downstream. We'll come to that. Nevertheless, there is no downstream without upstream, so access to space, manufacturing of satellites are prerequisites for developing the space economy further. And you can see, I think an interesting figure for Europe is that 1/4, 25% of the market, of the upstream market, is captured by the European industry. And I just want to compare this figure with the 15% public space spending, with 15% public space spending in Europe, with 5% of the worldwide workforce. Europe is capturing 25% of the market upstream. But downstream, it's the same figure, more or less. I mean, the global revenues are much higher. We are there at a level of 250 billion of the downstream market value. And here again, European industry manages to capture 25% of the market. So what we can say, European industry is still highly competitive. Now, why is commercialization of space a challenge for us in Europe? And why do we have to address it? Yes, the space sector is undergoing massive changes in technology, reusability, miniaturization, new ways of producing, etc. So real technological disruptive changes, but also new procurement, new business models, new methods. So now we cannot ignore this at all. We have to take this into step also because this is the future and this will bring to the space sector globally innovation and dynamism much more than ever. So this is the first point. Second point, the space economy is growing at a fast pace, as we have seen, but less than 6% of the global private investments went to European space companies. And also, another factor, which for us is a bit worrying, yes, is that European private investors are very small for the time being compared to worldwide investment. There is little European private investment in space. Still, I mean, we know that in Europe you have very large investment funds, VC, etc. But for a reason we are trying to, let's say, mitigate, space is still considered exotic, it's risky, there is a question mark on can we get the return on our investment, can we have a rapid exit, can we make our profit? So these are points that we have to address. Furthermore, we have, let's say, new mechanisms, such as SPAC, which open the door to non-European investors, and already we see such mechanisms are at work, and we have very good European newcomer companies which have been acquired with these mechanisms. And finally, as I mentioned to start with, commercialization is not new at ESA or in Europe, but so far it is a little bit dispersed. There are scattered activities, there is not a coherent approach, and also, other point of weakness, we have limited capacity in Europe for scaling up. So, in one word, this is what we want to achieve at ESA and in Europe, because ESA is only a part, of course, of the European space institutions. We work also closely with the European Union. We work closely with the national agencies. All the public institutions related to space in Europe have to work on this issue. We have to help the successful startups to scale up. We have to stimulate private investment in European space. And our vision and objective is really to host a very large and dynamic, fast-growing commercial space ecosystem by 2025. So we want to step up the growth rate of the private investments in space in Europe. We want to stimulate commercialization. There are numerous roles that space agencies can play to do this. We have seen with NASA and SpaceX, NASA has had a very clear role and I would say impact on the growth of SpaceX in the US. Perhaps we could inspire ourselves and look at the possibilities for new types of procurement methods, new roles such as anchor customer, enabler, facilitator, etc. And what we would like, as a minimum, is that since the global the global public investment in space, if we look at the European share of this is 15% in a stable manner, we want to at least reach 15% of the worldwide private space investment in Europe. We want to be at the same level for private and public spending. And this will be my last slide. We are working along 3 lines of action: speed, capital, and talent. I will start with talent, because in the end, this is perhaps the most important. I've been speaking to a number of investors, of VC, etc., and I asked them, what makes you choose a startup to invest in? And they all gave me the same reply. First is the team. We look at the team. We look at the quality of the team, the motivation, etc. If the team is good, we are ready to invest. And I believe in ESA, it's the same, by the way. It's the teams that matter. Of course, we have competence, we have individual qualities maybe, but what makes the success is the team. And I've had the chance to see so many team successes at ESA. I'm convinced it's the same elsewhere. So first, invest in talent, invest in people, invest in innovation, give the people the opportunities to work on new subjects. Also, perhaps invest in different disciplines. Usually, innovation happens at, let's say, the interface between different areas, between disciplines. Let's stimulate this kind of thing. Second recipe for talent is capital. Clearly, even if you have a great team, if you don't have the funding, it's a problem. And clearly in Europe, as I mentioned, we have an issue with capital in the sense of attracting private capital to space entities in Europe. We are working on this. We have already a partnership with the European Investment Fund that has started. We have signed a number of agreements with investment funds. We have also in the TIA Directorate an ESA Investor Forum. So we are getting there with ESA in, let's say, bringing together a critical mass of private investment and partners which will be able to invest in our companies. The third element is speed. Speed, because perhaps this is the most difficult one for us at ESA. We are a very successful agency. We have, as I was mentioning, a number of successes on which we can rely. But we are used to working a little bit in the old way. We want excellence. We want top quality. We don't want minimum viable products. We don't want good enough. We want the best. It's probably time for us to review a little bit the way we work, because the way we work is very well adapted to our classical missions. The way we work is less well adapted to the new space ways of working. And we are flexible. We have many different schemes, many different procurement schemes, many different industrial policy schemes. We can adapt. So let's adapt to this new world, and let's be more responsive, more reactive, reduce time to contract, simplify the processes, let's be very responsive. And I believe if we combine these three elements, speed, capital, and talent, we shall succeed collectively to really create a European new space sector. Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions or...
Based on this last point you just made around new processes, thank you. First of all, thank you. Thank you for a really great presentation. Based on that last comment you just made, do you think ESA, and again, congratulations on your new directorate, which is looking at commercialization throughout ESA. Do you think there's a will and the mechanisms, when you look at all of the different parts of ESA, to be considering these new business models, these new pricing models, the way to, bring in these types of things? And is that one of your biggest challenges to do that?
Yes. So yes and yes. There is a will, and as you know, where there's a will, there's a way, but there is a will in the sense that we are preparing for the Ministerial Council at the end of the year. So we see the proposals of all the directorates for new projects, new programs, and all our directorates, except perhaps the science one, but there it's more understandable, now have a commercial component or a commercially related activity. It can be a small one, it can be a very large one, such as telecommunications and integrated applications. In Earth observation, it's really taking up. But even in exploration, we also have a very strong commercial will. So yes, and it's very good because it shows how much commercialization has become important. It means also we have to have a coherent policy. And as you say, this is also, I would say, a main goal of this new directorate is to bring coherence and consistency, not to replace, not to take over, but to propose a coherent approach and to propose also activities where there are gaps. Because we are currently finalizing the mapping of activities across ESA, and yes, there are some gaps. In particular, new and emerging markets are not immediately covered by existing programs. So this also can be a place where we can help.
Hi, Juraj Zámečník of 3IPK. You mentioned the lack of, or let's say, not enough courage of, let's say, traditional VC funds going into space, maybe because of ROI in Europe. What is, in your view, the role of a corporate venture capital arms of some of your biggest suppliers? Could they play some role allocating more of the capital as they might have other ROI targets and so on?
Yes, this is a very good question too. First of all, yes, I am discussing also with the corporate venture capitals. But I think beyond that, space is now a transversal tool for so many sectors of the economy. It can be for health, for agriculture, for, of course, security, transport, mobility, etc. So what I think is also that we have to reach out not only to space VC, but to generalist VC, and to demonstrate to them that now space is not as risky or as exotic as it could be. It is a tool recognized by all sectors as an indispensable tool. So this is also something which we are doing, but you are right, the corporate VC are very important as well. Yes. Oui. One last maybe, because I have to go. If there is one last question. Okay, so thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.